Welcome back to the GSTL here in Korea. We're in the Mokdong studio. Soon to be moving to Gangnam, but not quite yet. This is the finals for the preseason tournament, and so far, like you said, we've been having some back and forth action here.
Yeah, LJM is now up with a 2-1 in this series. AZUBU just chose to send out Sleep. Next, he is up against first. We have a Zerg versus Protoss. The map is going to be Atlas.
Yeah, Atlas is one of our newer maps, and so far our new maps, what do you think about them? I'm actually liking them. They don't seem to have any real issues, and they're not too big.
I like them. There's a lot of dynamic going on the maps. They are not too big. They are small enough that you have a lot of potential for early pushes in the game. So I feel that we are actually like entering a stage now where you can play, where we have like the right size of maps. You know, back in Wings of Liberty, the maps were mostly either a little bit too big because people wanted to see more macro games, or very small where we saw a lot of aggression on those maps. On most of them now, we have the potential for both.
One thing I wanted to mention about these maps, I started to notice the way the third base is positioned on some of the maps is opposite of how you expect it, where the mineral patches kind of face towards the main base instead of facing away like you'd see on Daybreak, and that's kind of a new change that we haven't seen used too much, but I like it because it gives a terrain advantage to the player taking the third base, which was not really seen before. But going into this match, Sleep has to prove himself, and he's up against First, who is already proven that he's pretty familiar with these new units. He knows how to use Hallucinate really well. He's very map aware.
I really want to see what exactly he can do against the Zerg play. We talked about his run against Terran, and that was quite impressive, but he has to prove himself in a different matchup now, and Zerg has quite a lot of options against Protoss. What they struggle with the most is a Protoss player that is able to get this Sky Toss composition, where you have Storm in combination with a lot of Void Rays and also a Mothership out. If you get into this position, especially with the Tempest behind it, then it's really dangerous for a Zerg player, because Storms are gonna damage the Corruptors. You always have the safety of the Tempests. The Zerg player usually tries to react with Vipers, trying to pull them out, but then you have feedback to counter the Vipers. So it's really difficult for Zerg to do something, but the Protoss player has to have a really good economy to get there. So that's the biggest problem for Protoss. Get into this late game scenario where they can build up this army.
Yeah, it's something that it's an interesting clash, because Protoss player goes for this early, like we saw already in a Protoss versus Zerg in this preseason. You have the situation where the player's trying to get Tempest out on 3 bases, but they have to hold their third against the Hydra aggression, so it's a very thin line. They're trying to build a composition that is, once fully completed, very strong, but until that moment, very weak. So the Hydros player who's continuing the aggression oftentimes has the advantage there to try to pick off some of the Tempests, or to pick away at the gateway walls, and maybe even get that third Nexus.
I feel it's a very, very dynamic matchup right now. There are so many strategies that you can play. A lot of Protoss have problem dealing with Mutalisks because their acceleration has been increased. They are therefore a lot faster when you try to maneuver with them, so you can do a lot of damage. We have Swarm Host pushes that are usually accompanied by a few observers, and Hydralists to snipe your opponent's observers, overseers, I mean.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that you can do, and every single strategy needs a different response. Protoss players are utilizing a lot more Storm now against Zerg suddenly, because they see, well, you go into Hydralist, this unit is so much better right now, it works so much better with like Vipers, with the Swarm Host. So there are all these different strategies and compositions.
Important to be able to feedback Vipers and to also Storm. When you lose your Observer, you want to be able to Storm on top of those Storm Hosts, because Storm still affects burrowed units that are underground. So that's something that you can use as well when you're up against that type of contain.
And detection has been a problem for Protoss dealing with Swarm Hosts. If you have a good army set up at exactly the right point, it's very map dependent though, but if you have this position, then it's very difficult for a Protoss player to get to see the Swarm Hosts so they can counter them. Colossi is usually what you want to go for because of the range, and also they deal very well with the Locust. You can also use Storm, but having the Observer there is something that the Zerg is going to expect. So Overseers are part of the composition, and then you either have Corruptors or Hydras to take them out, deny the detection, and then the Protoss player is sitting there like a sitting duck and can't really do anything. So a lot of dynamic going on in this matchup.
I have a question for you, because I have not experienced or tried this yet. When you use the Oracle ability Revelation, I know it doesn't detect cloak units, but if you use it while they're unburrowed and then they burrow, can you see them?
You can see, the thing is, like with the Oracle, you can go for the detection. The problem is that it's so fragile that it's very difficult to get it actually in range. That's the biggest problem.
I mean not the detection ability, but the ability that reveals all the units, like Parasite and StarCraft 1. if I know it doesn't detect cloak units, but if it was uncloaked and if it was unburrowed, and then you reveal it, then when it burrows, can you see it? I don't know.
I actually don't know either.
If
To be quite frank.
that's one thing I hadn't thought about yet, actually, and I don't know how that works.
But
Maybe
in
we'll see
general,
that.
the problem that you have, no matter what type of detection you try to use,
Just getting close enough.
Exactly. There's so much damage potential against anti-air in this composition that you have a tough time getting close enough. And the Zerg is usually in a position where if he loses the Locust, well, can make sure that he zones out his opponent very, very well.
Yeah.
So it's getting into range is a big problem. That's why you usually try to go into Colossi. But we'll see if it even comes to this. We don't necessarily have to see Swarmos here. We could see Mutalisk. We could see just a normal push strategy by Sleep.
If you ask me, this is the matchup where Zerg's the most versatile right now in Heart of the Swarm with all the different openings and strategies they have.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I can certainly... Yeah, that's definitely true.
And that's something that makes it very difficult for a Pros player to prepare. You have to use a lot of scouting. That's where those hallucinations oftentimes come in. We've seen a lot of players go for Gateway Expands again nowadays because of the way that the new Nexus ability, Photon Overcharge, can allow you to take a Nexus. It's just much easier to expand that way.
Whatever it's going to be, first we'll have to deal with Sleep here. We are going into the 4th game at the GSTL Pre-Season tournament. In Heart of the Swarm, we have Sleep up against First. Brought to you by Cullen. Starting to the bottom right, we have our 3rd AZUBU player. This is, of course, Zerg, calls himself
AZUBU Sleep.
His ID just doesn't quite sound the same anymore. And his opponent to the top right, already taken 1 win against Ganji. He is...
I.M. First.
I'm not quite sure what's up with Ken today. Maybe he ate something wrong yesterday, but he's very, very shaky.
Yeah, coughing a little bit maybe. But we'll see what First is going to bring to the table here. Usually this matchup is, as I said before, kind of played out in a manner where the Zerg player is making the choices and the Protoss is scouting with Hallucinate, oftentimes with Observers as well.
Yeah. Well, what we see currently is an early scout for First. He wants to see exactly what's going on here, and at this point we don't have a pool, we don't have a gas just yet. And First is just trying to be as annoying as possible.
Yeah, does see that it is going to be a pool first.
The thing is, if you want to go for a hatch first, if you want to risk it, you can't really do it as soon as you have the probe in your main base, because this is something that the Protoss will immediately identify and then block your hatch. You lose a lot of time. So we have Sleep now forced to go into pool first, which he would have probably done anyways, but in this scenario he doesn't really have a choice.
No choice at all. Forge goes down before the Nexus as well, which is kind of interesting considering the pool timing he scouted, but it's going to allow him to be very annoying with this probe here.
You can go into a lot more gateway openings if you want to in Heart of the Swarm. This is definitely even more viable than it was in Wings of Liberty. But now we have a standard opening here for First going to the Forge and even blocking now the expansion spot of Sleep.
Yeah, he blocks the natural with the pylon, blocks the 3rd with the probe. This is going to be really annoying. And the only way to actually get that 3rd down now is for him to bring the Zerglings out. He even blocks with the pylon here. So this is a heavy block. This is going to cost 200 minerals, of course, but it's going to be worth it in the long run to keep the Zerg player's production down as well as his mining.
Exactly, and what we saw is that Sleep only built 2 Zerglings at the beginning. He was quite confident that this would be enough to take out the pylon and that he could get the hatch at the 3rd base, but both pylons are now done, and this is very annoying for Sleep.
He didn't know that the first pylon wasn't cancelled. He left with the drone, so he assumed it would be cancelled, but it was not, so he had to make those 2 additional lings. And now he can finally start this hatch, send the lings over, kill the 3rd pylon, or pylon at the 3rd.
Very late at the 4-minute mark now, we have the first expansion started. And of course this costs First 200 minerals, but as you pointed out, it's quite worth it. If you are really able to screw with your opponent's build orders this much, all the timings are going to be so much different.
And he's going to see the gas in the main! He sees no gas! This is actually huge because this is the biggest scary moment when you're a Pros player and you block the hatcheries that long, is whether or not your opponent goes double hatch, which is the predictable option, or if he goes for an aggressive build to follow us up because he's already behind. And him being able to get in there and see those gases is going to make First feel incredibly safe right now.
Yeah, he knows exactly what's going on. He has all the information that he needs. What's up with that flag, by the way? That has a very, very weird waving pattern.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's like the flag on the moon or something. Except the flag on the moon is obviously not waving that much, but...
It's not waving at all.
Well, actually, it's not. But I mean, the thing is, what I'm trying to say is the flag on the moon is weird, and that flag is weird as well. There are a lot of weird flags out there.
Yeah, it's like there's like a small mannequin that's just waving.
Have you seen the American flag? It's pretty strange. It's kind of crazy. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Mexican flag, there's an eagle. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Weird. But
I'm watching Fun with Flags. Everything in time. We have a new episode of The Big Bang Theory. I'm being educated a little bit.
yeah. Well, this flag has the symbol of the Dominion on it. Even though there are no Terran players present on the map, I guess those flags just don't have any power here anymore, do they?
These are Atlas winds that are currently roaming the map. Literally.
Yeah. What's up with these signs also? Do not enter. Why?
Well,
both of them say do not enter, so how do you get in?
Well,
are you going from the side with a dropship?
Okay, I have to actually say that Zerglings can't lead. I'm pretty sure they can't, so they don't know about that. They just do.
That's true.
They
That's
should be able to enter here, but they do anyways. The Zealot here does a little bit of damage and also confirms the third base once again. We have now for first follow-up with a Stargate, so we will see Phoenixes most likely. Could also see an Oracle start, but Phoenixes is something that we have seen in the past in this tournament, and they've been really successful. And this Stalker is really angry at the Mothership Core.
He's like, why don't you learn to shoot up? Probably talks like that.
Yeah, maybe.
That's how stalkers talk sometimes when they're angry at Mothership Cores.
One of the best things about the Stalkers is still this one picture that someone posted when the Stalker gets this hat.
Yeah.
That's like the best thing ever. It's cold in the void. There you go. Thank you. I have that on my PC, and every now and then I browse through my pictures, and I always start laughing when I see it. It's brilliant.
Look at how much opportunity the Mothership Core gives to this Stalker, by the way. Now that the Stalker, you know, they call the Mothership Core out, Mothership Core is joining forces with the Stalker to take map control against any Zerg who does not have Ling speed. He's also going to be able to find and kill this Overlord, even without entering where is prohibited. He's gonna have to break the rules. The Zerglings, even though they can't read, they're actually enforcing here. Will he recall? No.
Not for one Stalker, and it would already have been too late. So the Zerglings surround the Stalker and take it down. And for Sleep, things at this point, well, if he loses the Queen, that would of course be quite annoying, but that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, the Mothership Core not going to be able to take that Queen out with other Queens around, so he decides to turn around. Phoenixes, we haven't talked about this too much yet, but Phoenixes are better in Heartless Swarm, and if he hides them and goes into full like this could be devastating not only to the Queens, especially when it's a little bit weaker already, but to the Overlords as well.
Keep in mind we have a pretty late tech Tulea at the 9-minute mark. This is not what we usually see in this matchup. Usually it's a little bit faster, but with the 3 bases and also the additional drone production that we had for Sleep, he's not just trying to defend everything on his hatch tech. This is why we see now those Spore Crawlers. He saw that we have a few Phoenixes, but as you already said, they can do a lot of damage, you know.
Yeah, they were hidden. Picks up the Queen. The 4th Phoenix is about to join, so he should be able to kill that Queen. May have to use a second lift. It's going to be close. Yeah, he'll have to drop it down.
Has to use the second lift, but that's energy that he will definitely be happy to invest.
And he's going to kill the second Queen that's already weakened. Even though there's a Spore Crawler there, he knows the Queen's hit points are low enough that he can do this and get away.
Yeah, you could really see how he hesitated for a second and looked at the hit points and was like, okay, well, I can actually do this without losing a Phoenix.
And the Lings that are out here give map control, but against a Phoenix build, you don't really need that until you want to take your third. So those Lings are all Larva used that is no longer useful. He made 52 Lings, he's making 10 more, so that's 31 Larva used on Zerglings that is not going to be in drones or anything else. So he needs to make sure that that third base does not go down, or he's going to have invested so much into this.
If you concentrate on Zerglings, by the way, he's supply block. This is how great first additional aggression here actually is. If you go into a lot of Zerglings and try to attack with them, the Graviton Beam is not going to help the Protoss player at all, because it just takes so much energy.
But
this is the idea behind this.
Yeah, the Lings get the Zealots that we're not paying attention out, though. But you're so right, you cannot defend with Graviton Beam. You're going to have to use your Sentries, you're going to have to use your Zealot Force. Phoenixes with a little bit of extra range here pick up this Queen and will pick her off and get away without too many scratches.
What Sleep basically ensures with this heavy investment into Zerglings is that there's not going to be a third base for the Protoss at this point. And we have him going into the Locust now. We will see, therefore, the Swarm Host with the upgrade. This is quite a long range that he has. Yeah. This is more than 2 screens where he can maneuver the Locust.
He may have to use some force fields here to protect his sentries, depending on how well this is micro, but the Lings are still saying no to that third. And the Locust coming out with the Spire likely means we'll see some Corruptors come out to do exactly what you were talking about earlier, to pick off those Observers and also deal with the Colossi.
I'm really interested to see how well Sleep is going to use a Swarm Host. There are so many things that you can do with them. You need to make sure that you have the perfect range. If you are doing this, then you can stay out of harm's way while your Locusts are doing so much damage. They are so strong, and with those extra 15 seconds, it's crazy. 25 seconds duration, you have a massive range that you can use to pressure the natural, the wall, the army in general, and for first, this is going to be difficult to deal with.
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult. His third base is late as it is.
Keep in mind that the Locusts actually benefit from the upgrades that are being researched.
Yes, including the increased lifetime upgrade for the Locusts, which is going to make them last 10 in-game seconds longer before they time out. Just gives them a bit of extra opportunity to do damage. It's actually called Enduring Locust now, is the name of the upgrade.
25 in total, that's what he's going to have. And now he's moving out. The Queens are helping out here too. Can also spread the creep. We don't have a Hydralisk Den. He's only going into Corruptors to pick up the air units. That's going to help him quite a bit here.
He sees the Swarmos now, and he has to burrow those if the Phoenixes are nearby because he does not want them to be picked up into the air. With this many Queens here, though,
we also don't have any Observers.
Yeah, no robotics means no Observers.
And here we go.
This is going to be a big problem.
Yeah, Locusts are being started, and the Colossi will help him against the Locusts, but he has to be really careful how he maneuvers his army.
Yeah. Even losing hit points on his units is a problem. But no matter what he does, he has to deal with them somehow. If he adds cannons, he's going to have to invest in resources to keep his bases alive without fighting with units, and more Stormos are being produced. Those Corruptors are out just in the front with the Overseer, just to say, hey, if you have any Observers, I'd like to take them out.
And here come the Locusts, and he's getting into a much better position with the Swarm Hosts. Now he can do quite a lot here. He is still producing them, so he will have a very strong force. The +2 attack upgrade has already been started, so the Locusts are benefiting from the +1 at this point. We have the Corruptors to deal with the Air Force.
Yeah, and you know, before these Swarm Hosts were made, Sleep was 800 resources more inefficient with the trades he was making against the Phoenixes, obviously, than his opponent. And he's already almost evened it out, only 200 resources behind now, just from having the Swarm House out for a few minutes, killing some of the Zealots. Now he's getting a Phoenix here.
He has the Swarms now in the middle of the map, and I feel that he should really try to get into a siege position so that he can put pressure on the Protoss. Swarm Hosts are much better when you siege up and when you don't go into a defensive mode. That's where they really shine, and this is what he does. He has the Overseers now in his army, so he can pick off the Observers if there are any.
Yeah, really great position on the Corruptors. They're on that high ground area where he's going to need an Observer even to see them, and he can just fly around in circles here.
And First is now trying to get into this air composition that we talked about, adding the second Stargate, and he's already building the first few Void Rays. Here come the Locusts trying to pick off Stalker after Stalker, and he has a lot more that he built, but that he doesn't have in positions just yet. In total, there are 14 Swarm Hosts.
Hey, he left a few of them behind. He's going to move those forward now. But eventually these gateways will go down. Losing the gateways is not the problem. He just wants to make sure he doesn't lose any of his units. Now the Queens are a little bit exposed here. This is an awkward position for Sleep. He needs to burrow right away. He does. The Corruptors getting a little bit ahead of themselves. One of them falls down.
Yeah, he's trying to move back here, but now suddenly the Phoenixes are sweeping in, and immediately the Graviton beam is being used.
But you can see that even with that nice catch on the units with the Corruptors there and the Observer being picked off, it's so difficult to actually kill them. He was able to push them back, but he can't kill them quite yet.
What really misses here for Sleep is the Hydra Den, and he's building it now. But he needs more DPS against the ground army. The Locusts alone are just not enough, and he had a few Zerglings with this, but there's just so much DPS with the Courses amount that First is controlling that he can't do anything with Lings. He needs something else, and Hydralisks are usually the choice, but Sleep wasn't just there yet. And First on 3 bases now still has the opportunity to go into this tech.
The Corruptors here getting very aggressive. The Force Field's not working against these Zealots. The Locusts are loving it. And at this point, the Nexus will not die just yet. The Force Fields are going to buy a little bit more time. This is great usage of those sentries. He is forced to make cannons here, but he knows that he's not going to be able to actually go and kill these Swarm Hosts. With all the Corruptors there, with the Overseers, he has 3 Overseers just to be safe.
The 4th base has to be cancelled, I feel. He's really putting a lot of pressure onto those. Even getting into range of the Colossi now, putting pressure on them and forcing them back. But First, overall, is pulling up a really good defense. He's making sure that he has the DPS in the area of effect to deal with the Locusts. Can he deal with the Swarm Hosts, though?
Good Time Warps here. He's actually going to catch these queens. The question is, are the Void Rays enough for the Corruptors? If he can kill the Corruptors, he can kill the Swarm Hosts.
He's focusing on those Colossi and he's taking out a lot of them. He takes out another one. We still have all those Void Rays going strong and most of the queens are already eliminated.
Yeah, and now he's actually able to get in here and start targeting. It looks like he lost his Observer, though.
He's building an Observer at this point, but we have now the entire army of Sleep moving back. I have to say that First is playing this quite well, but he's under a lot of pressure and he's down in supply. He's trying to make this army work. Sleep, on the other hand, is expanding all over the map.
And he's killing these units for free. 2 Stalkers going down here. I love how he uses the Swarm Host, where he will burrow them for a second to let the Locust come out, then he unburrows immediately and moves back so he can make sure that he utilizes every single cooldown, every single wave of Locust that he can use, he is using.
But he is in a position where First sets up a 4th base, and this is a chance that he should try to not give to a Protoss player. Because with the production that we now have for First and the increasing Void Ray count, this is a lot of DPS. If he uses his charge ability, then I feel this is too much damage. We also have Storm being researched.
He will need the Storms. This is actually a great moment because at this moment while he's making the switch, there are no Colossi and his Storm is not ready. He could do a lot with this. He's forced to use the ability on the Mothership core here to stall some time for the Nexus.
I'm not sure really if Sleep has it. Currently, he's at 200 supply and he's still in the lead. He's putting a lot of pressure on the First, but if First has the time,
take the Nexus
then
down.
Suddenly we have so much going for the Protoss player here.
Storm does not finish.
Storm.
Yeah.
It's done in a second.
He loses the Nexus, and this gives Sleep the chance to turn around here. +3 finishes with +3 and Storm. Had he had those a few seconds ago, this would have been such a different situation. He's going to let the Locust tank here. A good Storm.
He gets the first few Storms in, and here come the Void Rays. If he gets a couple of additional Storms, this will do so much, and this is exactly what happens.
Yeah, this is a really problematic position once the Storms go away, though. He's going to need to remake his Nexus. He does not have an army enough to bully the Zerg army back to give him space. He was able to take one good engagement with the Storms, but then he was out of energy, and now the Locusts are coming in, attacking his High Templar, and he still has not been able to remake that Nexus. Meanwhile, there's a Ling run by at the 3rd.
Good snipe on the Mothership core too, and Sleep still has a huge surplus in bases. He has those 2 bases at the bottom left that he doesn't saturate just yet, but we have First with Zealots. He's trying to send a few to the bottom to take down all these hatches, and he's doing a good job here. The entire army of Sleep is out of position.
Yeah. In fact, Sleep even unburrows his Swarm Hosts over this for a moment, moves them back just to be a little bit more secure with them.
This gives First time to breathe and to build up his composition.
And this, of course, forces more and more Spine Crawlers to be built as well at the other base, so the Zealots can't kill them either.
And now this is exactly the scenario that so many Zerg players are afraid of. We have First going into a massive amount of Void Rays. He has the High Templars to back them up, and we also have additional Colossi.
The Hydras did clean up the Zealots. Adding the Colossi in is important here because I feel you can't rely on Storms alone against this type of composition because your Templar just have to get too close to the Locust. If you want to use your Storms on the Locust, that's not really what you want, but if you want to kill the Hydras, you have to go through the Locust first, so you need some extra DPS with those Colossi.
A lot of Protoss will try to later on trade their Colossi and get additional Tempest and even more Void Rays out on the map, but we are not there just yet. The 4th base for First is not there. This is really such a close game because what First is trying to do is get the economy to make all this happen, but Sleep is in upgrades far ahead. He's going into +3/+3 now, even adding the 3rd attack upgrade for his air units.
Yeah, the 3rd attack upgrade for his air units is going to be extremely useful with those Broodlords, and with the +3 on the ground, when the Broodlings land, they're going to have extra damage, and basically he's going to have what people are calling the Broodlords of the ground combined with real Broodlords of the sky.
I really feel that he needs to get a few Tempests out there just to keep the Zerg at bay.
He needs the range. He can't just keep eating these shots forever. He needs to actually do some damage to those Swarmhouses, to those Broodlords.
And with the Tempest, you also force the Zerg player to commit to an attack because he can't just stand there and take the shots of the Tempest, so he has to go in, and this gives the Templar the chance to shine, and later on, of course, also the Void Rays, and here we go.
Good
he
Storms.
uses the Void Ray charge upgrade immediately, and here come the Storms.
The Storms are excellent here on those Hydras.
They are melting away.
And he takes a massive supply lead here already. If the Void Rays target, those Broodlords are in trouble.
He's trying to run away, and this is exactly what he has to do. He's backing off, and now we have Sleep with the advantage in supply, but only because he just built immediately 26 additional Hydras, which uses his entire bank, and we still have 5 High Templars left that could storm those Hydras any point.
He's got those 5 Templar, and if he continues to storm like he was in that last fight, that's going to be a big problem. There's not a lot of ground army here to protect against the Locusts. The Broodlords are still alive, and the Hydra's ready. There's no Colossi. He only has the Templar. This is a very important moment. He needs to do damage. The Observers are going down. He has to keep them alive. Great storms on every Zerg unit. The Broodlords, the Hydras, and the
don't
Swarmhosts.
stand a chance, and suddenly Sleep is dropping in supply like a madman down below 100. Here come those Void Rays. They're using the overcharge ability once again, and bam, the Zerg army is history.
It's history. And this is not the type of history the Zerg players want to read about. He's going now into the Hydralisk Den. He's taking it out. He has too much momentum here. Those storms changed everything. When you're burrowed, and when you're a Broodlord, you can't really dodge those. He hit everything. GG.
GG. Even without the Tempest, the Void Rays, they take charge. And with the Storms, this is just way too much DPS.
You know, this was the situation. I love how this matchup plays out right now because it's basically a Zerg player trying to never allow the Protoss player to take that one engagement, which is so hard for the Protoss player to do, but if the Protoss player takes that engagement, then usually they can push things back and start taking out base and start taking out the tech. And first got 2 good engagements, and that was what won him the game.
What was really important for him was just to survive, and he did it long enough to get the Void Ray count up. Against a massive amount of Void Rays, there's very little that a Zerg can do, because you have, if you are in cooldown, if you're with the overcharge ability, then you suddenly have this massive amount of damage, and the Zerg has to try to fall back, wait until the overcharge is gone, and then go in while you're on cooldown. This gives him a chance, a fighting chance. What most Zergs did in Wings of Liberty was rely on Infestors, but this is so much more difficult now in Heart of the Storm.
For multiple reasons. First reason being that they no longer take the range upgrades for their Infested Terrans. The second one being that Fungal is so much more difficult to use. So if you try to add Infestors in here, you're also facing Storm is one problem for your army from the Templar, but if you try to bring Infestors in there, you could also just get feedback with all of your Infestors. Then what are you going to do?
With Infestors, you usually rely on the Fungal. Even if you go for the Infested Terrans with the Storms that you have, it's just too much area effect damage, especially now with the reduced hit points on the Swarm X. So this is difficult to handle. But first of all, had to really survive for this long, and this was the challenge in this game. You could really see that Sleep was trying to add the pressure up, but when he got his 4th base up, was able to defend it, and then increased his Void Ray count, had finally the Storm ability, then suddenly the entire balance in the game shifted.
Exactly.
And this is where First was able to shine.
And when he forced the cancels on those Nexi, canceling a Nexus is great, it keeps your opponent's economy down, but if he's still on 3 bases, he can make that army. If you don't do anything else, then he will have it eventually. Now what is AZUBU going to do now?
Supernova sitting to the top left, and it looks like it's gonna be him.
Yes. This is a great choice. I feel this is one that they are a little bit forced into. This guy is great in Terran vs. Zerg, not only in Heart of the Swarm so far, but also in Wings of Liberty. He was just known for his Terran vs. Zerg.
So far, Supernova, he was able to win against Aphrodite. He won also against Hack, but then lost against the Protoss player. He lost to Extreme in the match against Startail. Now he's up against another Protoss player.
Yeah, another Protoss, not a Zerg. I had all those thoughts of Swarm Host and Infestors in my head, and I was immediately thinking, I saw Supernova, yeah, Terran vs. Zerg!
No, not this time.
But he is really good in Terran vs. Zerg, decent against Protoss, as you were mentioning some of those stats. Currently a Code B player, and he's coming out for AZUBU several times already.
Actually, I think only once.
Has he only once?
In my head, no, actually you're right. He played the starting match against FXO.
Yes. Okay, I thought so.
Yeah, against JKS, but he lost to JKS. So it's actually funny, he only won his matches against Terran players so far. The match against Zerg and the match against Protoss, he both lost. But they are, I mean, I still feel it's the best option now. For
well, when you look at only 2 games played in the GSTL, it's not really indicative necessarily of his skill in the matchups.
The sample size that we have here is so small that it doesn't really say a lot. It's just interesting to note the games that he already played, but he has to show a bit of a different game here. And First seems tired.
Yeah, he does. Well, he'll have 5 minutes to rest.
No.
No? So I was hearing that Levitate song. I'm like all wrong about the 5-minute breaks today. Earlier I thought we weren't going to have one. And now I'm thinking we are going to have one. It's that Levitate song, man. It's levitating my brain out of my head, and I can't focus. I don't know if we have a 5-minute break or not.
Well, no. We have one more game, and then we might see a 5-minute game, depending on what First does here.
Yes. Well, First is looking pretty good today, I have to say.
Yeah.
His patience in that game against the Swarm Host was so well done. The thing is, when you're trying to make observers to deal with those Swarm Hosts, that means you can't be making Colossi. So he knew exactly how to balance his ratio of Colossi and his Templar to get the Storms out You can tell he has a lot of experience against Foremost.
Yeah. Also keep in mind that this means that Supernova is the last man standing for his team. So right now, this is a lot of trust that AZUBU puts into the Terran player. If he loses, then it's all over.
Exactly.
Belcher Vestige is going to be the map. We have Terran versus Protoss. The map is loading, and Supernova has to deal with first. He already won 2 of his games. Now he's in his 3rd one. Might be able to close the series and help LGIM to victory in the GSTL Pre-Season Finals. We're going to see what's going to happen here. Jumping into the game is Supernova versus First, the GSTL Pre-Season Tournament with Colin Wolf.